Hello everybody, this video is mainly for the male audience right there, and it's about sexuality. How should a man relate to his own sexuality? And how to get laid in a time where women watch so much porn that they really don't feel desire anymore at the same way as they used to in the past, and they have also become quite empowered. And if on top of this you are quite the beta male and don't got the biggest cock and feel like you don't got chance to get the P on the PCR, then how are you gonna relate to that fact? By masturbating to some Japanese anime type of shit in front of your computer all day, or maybe to go on the nofap to get some of that mojo up so maybe you can attract women a little bit better. Well, as you understand, those guys that got the, their cocks, big and that sort of stuff, they don't got to go on nofap to increase their attractive powers and that sort of game. And I would say that we should relate to our own sexuality over in a couple of ways and a couple of aspects days. And one of those aspects is of course the health side. How's your sex ways going to help your airways? How it's going to affect your mental health and also your physical health? Well, who knows? It might be very specific to you as an individual. And the only thing I'm going to say over here is pretty clear, that if you're going to impregnate a lot of women, you're going to have to bear the consequences of that. So it might become quite expensive of a habit to impregnate a lot of women, because they're gonna come after you for that. If you don't do that, they will leave you alone for sure. They won't give a shit. But if you get them pregnant, you're going to have to get some dollars out of your pockets to take care of those kids and that sort of stuff. You can't just think that you're gonna get away with that shit. So that's just a real world situation way to relate to your sexuality. The other ways to think about how this is going to affect your mind, maybe your ability to feel passion or focus or interest in other stuff, not just sex and having it. I would say that if you are a certain type of male, it's understandable that you don't attract too many females, and females, their whims go on the wind. One day it's this way and one day it's the other way. And there's a whole movement on the internet for the males to become more male, just like lifting that weight. I'm gonna say that don't do it, don't buy into that I'm gonna become more manly to get laid type of game. It's not a good idea. It's gonna backfire on you. If you're not naturally the alpha male, fuck every chance I get type of dude, you won't ever become that dude. With anything you do to your life, you won't ever become that dude. It's just that you cannot change some parts of yourself. It's just a fact. So don't try too hard there. But don't give up and become the I'm gonna just watch porn all day type of dude. It's a shitty way to live. It's really shitty way to live. When you do it long term, it becomes such a tedious way to live that, who can take that sort of game? So there has to be a healthier way to relate to this shit. Well, some guys, they go for a lot of variety on the females. They fuck a lot of different type of females, and they don't really get too caught up with any one of them. They don't form those relationships. And This is the one night stand type. There's a whole scene of the one night stand out there on YouTube too. Just find it there. It's just guys talking about how to get that one night stand type of living life done right. I have never done that. I don't know. So, I don't know. But I wouldn't go that way either. Because why get involved in that short-term period? Maybe it's the most natural way for a male, actually. Maybe it's the most natural, but it can become quite hedonistic, and you can get enmeshed into a lot of maybe kind of problem types. Because what kind of females do that one night stand type of living? Well, females that are probably very interested in pleasure, so addictive behavior types. Maybe even addicts, and you really shouldn't probably fuck any addicts. You know, like hardcore drug addicts, you shouldn't fuck with them. It's just common sense, you know, guys. So maybe that's not the right way to go either. Then there's the dude that forms a long-term relationship, or even a relationship that can last even a couple of months. It's still pretty great, probably. And then there's the break-up fever. You know, you break up with that girl, you're just down on yourself and that kind of stuff, and then you bounce back from it and go for another one. And yeah, that might be actually quite a great way to live, but I also feel that at the same time, as a man, you should relate to your own manliness also in a way that you should learn how to be alone. Also, you should learn who you are as just you, not with anybody else. Because what I have noticed is that women's company, it changes you. It just changes you, and it makes you act in a certain way, and maybe you will find your more genuine self when you're just alone. So then there's that type of a dude, and that type of a dude can go a lot of ways, you know. He can get into this kind of, you know, fapping to fetish stuff videos on YouTube. I mean, on some foreign esoteric type of website all day type of living. That's his way to relate to his own sexuality. It's just this kind of pleasure seeking, you know, get into all kinds of weird territories and order all kinds of, you know, funny sex toys online, and, you know, type of way to animate this sort of game. I know this stuff very well. You know, I did it like fucking hardcore. If I was ever hardcore into sports or arts, I was double hardcore to fapping Japanese women. You know, it was just my fucking stuff. So because of this, I haven't really felt that I would want to get really involved with any female in that sense, because, you know, most of them in Finland are not, you know, Japanese. You know, I would land myself in Japan. It would just probably go the fuck every opportunity I get type of way, and I would probably fly away there much better, because I have such a small cock. Well, it's actually quite normal. It's actually normal there. It might even be a bit big there. You know, I would just fly there. You know, probably very fine with those. But, you know, with Finnish women, I have always felt kind of, you know, awkward and kind of unnatural, kind of like they're too different from me, you know. I don't get that kind of vibe. I don't feel that kind of same playing field, you know. I don't feel that, you know, we are on the same level type of stuff. You know, I just don't meet anybody I don't have any feelings for, so why get involved in that? That's my own stance. If you don't have any feelings for it, why get into that? Because just having sex, you know, it's just a short experience. You know, it's kind of the same as with taking drugs. Why do you do something that only lasts for an hour and then it's gone? You know, I don't no longer do that type of stuff, because I realized that it's not worth it. There's not enough meaning in it. It has to be something that carries over to my next year, carries over to my next decade even what I do, and that's worthwhile for me, not this short-term pleasure seeking game. And of course also a man should look at his own sexuality in a sense that you can get pretty fucking sick through this, there's all kinds of STDs and this sort of stuff, and condoms don't always work. You might get that girl pregnant even though you didn't mean that, and that sort of stuff, and it will land your ass in trouble, this way. So, yeah. There's really not a clear answer to this. Just find your own way, but don't expect that if you try one of these ways that you can go back. Don't expect that if you, even if you become really hardcore like a celibate monk, don't expect that you can go back to being the fucker dude. It might not be possible, even if you have been even if you have been celibate for 10 years, you're probably strong as ever back in there, those guys that have been just fapping and fucking away, they're gonna have erectile dysfunction and can't get hard with even the hottest girls and that kind of stuff. If you do the celibacy type of stuff 5 years, you're going to be hot as heck, back. When you're back, you're going to be fucking like an animal, It's going to be the most, passionate type of experience there. But otherwise, it's just this. For me, in my own life, I've been just feeling that I would just prefer if I wasn't this type of creature at all, this type of procreation machine. If I just didn't have this part in me at all, I would kind of be happier, to be just in this world, all these people, and I could just talk to everybody, and just I wouldn't have to get involved, but sex is it's so prevalent, it's so important type of, it's so there in each human interaction and in everything we do. It's the basis of all of it. It's very hard to downplay on the importance of that. So it's not possible, even if I wish to be some sort of, ethereal body type, not this physical sex machine type of at all. But at the same time, I'm not very geared towards that. Some guys are very, geared towards being a father and being the fuck machine, and that's one of the ways that you can relate to sex. Of course, that's the nature's kind of intended way that you're gonna become a father. You're gonna raise a child, and the child might be a boy or might be a girl, and you're gonna teach him or her about sexuality in a certain way. You're not even gonna mention it, or you're gonna talk about it. You're gonna say this is fun and this is not, and this sort of stuff. And it's gonna affect that, and you might have very strong kind of feelings about your lineage, the whole tribe about it, where you came from and this sort of stuff, and you want to pass that on to the next generation, and you value your genes and this sort of stuff. And not all guys are going to be like that, not all guys are of good heritage, so to say. Not all guys feel strongly about their, so to say, genes, they might think that I have the shittiest genes ever, but at the same time, some guy that is gonna be the best genes, I'm gonna procreate like mad, gets 10 children and 5 of them become drug addict killers and violent offenders, all that kind of stuff. And then the guy that doesn't think that he has great genes, his kid would become a fucking genius in something. He would become such a great figure in human history that it would be a travesty if he didn't live. But you cannot fully expect that. So keep in mind that children, they even die in the womb, some of them. So they died during the childbirth. Some of them get very hurt even in their childhood. Some of them get killed in their childhood. This sort of stuff. It's just such a fucking complex issue. How do you relate to that bullshit? If you just think about it in a sense that I'm just gonna get my pleasure, fuck away, and then I'm gonna vanish, and this woman is going to bear the results of that. Even the women can't bear the consequences of that. Even the women cannot really fully probably understand the consequences of actually what is going to happen when this child is born into this world. It's such a big fucking question. You're really bringing about another possibility for huge opportunity, huge suffering, huge victory, huge anything. It's huge anything. And does the negative triumph the positive of in your life? If you feel like life is great and I should celebrate it in this way, there should be more human beings, then maybe you might also look at the situation of it. Like, what is the situation where you're living? Is your living situation great? Do you have a lot of money, and do you have this big ranch or this like mansion, and this a lot of land, and peaceful country there, and all the systems out there, schooling, that sort of stuff. Just plot a child right there, he's gonna be fine. But some other land, just like third world type of shit, gonna end up working in some factory or suffer like mad out of some disease, whatever, a war, it's the possibilities of it are kind of endless. So you would also look at the situation of it, but in that situation you're no longer really resolving or relating to your own sexuality. In a sense, you're relating to the world and how it is, and how your sexuality relates to that situation. So you're in kind of not fucking even with the women, you're fucking with the situation of it. You just hump the air basically there. So most people don't think about it maybe that deep, because the natural impulses to act in a certain way are very strong. And if you repress sexuality, which is one way to relate to your sexuality as a male, you can repress it down a lot. It can be repressed so that you almost kind of feel like you're losing it, and then all of a sudden it comes back in some weird way, just like that, and you're gonna maybe getting some trouble because of that. There's all kinds of stuff happening in the churches because of that, and it might be related to religion, that you were taught that this is kind of evil, and that's one way to relate to this sex stuff. And because they think like that, it might be related to all these questions why they deem it evil. And it's such a complex topic that you cannot really say one clear answer to it, because the world is such a big bunch of global magnetic bullshit spinning stuff, So remember that. How you're gonna relate to that. And also remember that you don't fully understand even the consequence of not bringing about that life or bringing about that life. Don't expect as a male, by the way, that you can even impregnate a woman. It might be impossible for you. You might be able to fuck a lot of women, but you might be infertile, or the women might be infertile. They wouldn't get pregnant because of that. So there's a huge variability, but don't leave it hanging right there that because I'm probably infertile, I could just fuck away with anybody. It wouldn't be a problem, and that sort of stuff. Yeah. And then nowadays, a lot of women, they use these what are they called, they cannot get pregnant because they use the pills and this sort of stuff, and you can see the effects of that, the fucking with their heads, and yeah, we are really in first world countries, we are really in a fucked up situation in terms of fucking stuff. In my own opinion, it's just getting out of hand, it's getting out of hand. And then you also have an option to relate your sexuality by becoming a porn star. I don't fully close that off as a possibility for me, by the way. I could probably, I have very good, ideas. I'm good with the cameras, and I'm good with editing. I could do the most imaginative. I have such ideas for porn. I have such ideas for porn videos. I could do the best of it. I could do such imaginative kind of, playing with audio, very stuff, that type of shit. It would be the best type of shit you have ever seen, and I would become famous for it. I can't do this shit alone. I need some fine females to do that shit. And it's one way that I could relate to my own sexuality. It's probably the most extreme, coming from this type of celibate monk type of living and becoming this like porn figure, like this porn figure. I'm not really closing that off, because at this point I kind of understand the whole picture of this, and I could bring my own kind of creative vision to that. But at the same time I would feel wrong about that. I would feel like I'm breaking my kind of values there. But at the same time it's kind of interesting to bring my vision there. So that's the way that I would probably relate to my own sexuality. And I have this kind of fantasy that at some point I'm gonna land my ass in Japan and I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna bring that vision there. But at the same time, I could do it over here. I just need a couple of, women that are really interested in how to do that. And we are gonna do the most interesting type of porn ever that has been made. And, I have the fucking vision how it's gonna be done. Yeah. So, how do you relate to your own sexuality? There's really not a clear-cut way. And do you have any choice in there? Do you have any choice, or is it kind of chosen for you based upon your body and your living situations and your country, your culture and this sort of stuff? Imagine yourself living in a Muslim country. Would your sexuality be any different? I would probably be quite normal. Would I be a family man? I don't know. In a Muslim country, maybe. I don't know. But understand also the culture of it. Yeah, keep them males, females empowered type of shit. Here's the rant. Thanks for watching this video.